So I'll ask you briefly before you begin. Again, the same question, which is with an audience of young people like this who, as John has pointed out, are all on the cusp of change, are all learning, are all in the process of moving towards adulthood. How did you think about this morning?
I think that chaos, coming back to that word, is really facing your cobwebs and converting the cobwebs into something grand, convert them into golden strands. It takes time, it takes effort, but like, hey, diamond grows in the pits. Flower grows in the soil. So darkness, problems, chaos, uncertainties can produce very strong, beautiful treasures. And very often life does take us on this crazy, wild ride. We've got to keep our mind very clear of where we're heading, what we're doing, and very often we're not. And that is what I spent many years in, that state of confusion. But there was something within myself that I knew that somewhere along the line I would find the light out of the tunnel, and it wasn't a gorilla holding a torch, but I would find the exit. And it took me time, but hey, I think I did it. Here I am. Here I am.
The stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning, and my name is Levi. I was born in Gibraltar. I lived in Gibraltar most of my life. And I'd like to thank Jan and his team for this wonderful event. And I'd like to thank this audience for being a fabulous audience. In a while, you're going to help me do something, but not yet. Let me tell you a couple of stories. The first one is a very short story. A little boy saw a puppy. And he went up to the puppy and he touched the puppy. And again, he touched the puppy. And again, he touched the puppy. Isn't that a touching story? Let me tell you now a slightly more philosophical story. A man was walking in the field, and he was looking for meaning, and meaning was being very elusive. He bumped into a guru sitting on this wonderful pillow, satin pillow, and he asked the guru, which is the way to meaning? So the guru points out, doesn't speak, points out in this direction, and off the man goes, looking for meaning. Halfway through, he falls, splatters, gets up, and he thinks, maybe I misunderstood the directions. He goes back to the guru again and says, Mr. Guru, which way to meaning? And again, the guru points out in the same direction, and off the man goes, looking for meaning. He falls, screams, splattered, comes back bloodied, goes back to the guru and says, stop pointing, talk, tell me where is the road to meaning? And the guru said, meaning is just after the splat. That is what I learned with my life. Let me tell you part of my story. When I was 11 years old, there used to be a system whereby we would sit an exam called the 11 plus. And the 11 determine your academic life, essentially for the future. If you passed 11 plus, you would be filtered in one direction. If you failed the 11 plus, you'd be filtered in a different direction. I failed my 11 plus. It meant not only that I had failed my 11 plus, but that my friends who had passed 11 plus, so the education and everybody else, considered me to be a failure. I then sat the 13 plus, and I failed the 13 plus. I crash landed again, so was a failure twice. I then sat my GCSEs, and I ended up with a very meager number of GCSEs. Couldn't do mathematics. In fact, it was actually forbidden, prevented from doing mathematics. I was that bad. And after my GCSEs, I decided, you know what? I'm dropping out of school. And I did. My life was chaotic, confusing. Now, my chaos was of no impact to the United Nations, to the rest of the world, to the universe. But it was my chaos, my problems, which I had to confront. And I always try and inject a sense of humor into problems, because I think humor is a wonderful treasure if we can use humor positively. And I used to say to myself and to friends, you know, I'm now nibbling at yeast and shoe polish just to help me rise and shine. My life was confused. I remember I used to buy all these Chinese fortune cookies and open the message inside in rice paper and trying to find if I could find the meaning of life inside the cookies. But I realized that I was being cuckoo to try and find the meaning of life in a cookie. So I dropped that idea. And finally I said, you know, I'm finding no meaning to my life. I'm going to head to a kibbutz, a farm in Israel. I was looking for the pastoral life, for romance, soil, cornfields, turkeys, geese, you name it. I got to Israel in the autumn, and if you know anything about farming, autumn is the cotton season. So I spent some time, considerable amount of time, picking cotton. And when we had collected all the cotton like a swarm of locusts, I was then sent to the turkey pens. And in the turkey pens, I spent so much time with the turkeys that I could even speak Turkish. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I'm going somewhere. Finally, after spending a long time with the turkeys and being fluent in Turkish, I was then transferred to cows, the cow shed. And I spent a long time with Gwendolyn and Gwyneth and Georgina. I call the cows different names. And I spent tons of time just milking cows. So really, udders became my life. I used to milk the cows. My duty was at night. Cows, I believe, produce something like 30 liters of milk a day. And that is really what I entertained myself with. In fact, the mooing of cows was so prominent that they went in one ear, out the other. So at the time I was dorming this French guy. He was an incredibly strong guy to the extent that his tattoos had been done by a stone mason. He was a hippie, and he referred to his girlfriend as Mrs. Hippie. But Mrs. Hippie always carried one book in her hand. I'll tell you what it was. And if you haven't read this book, you must. If it's the only book you read in the whole year, read this book. It's Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. You may know that Viktor Frankl spent quite a number of years in concentration camps during the Holocaust. His books refer to his experiences in the Holocaust, but also that if you have meaning in life, you can battle through. So his concept, logotherapy, as I was milking the cows, I was reading the book. And sometimes I'd read sections of the book to the cows. They would nod at me in agreement until I was so in love with the book and with its message that I decided, you know what? I'm going to try and aim for something different. One day, I left the kibbutz. I traveled to Jerusalem. I went to the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And here was I, ready to take a Bachelor of Arts degree in International Relations and African Studies. But splat. I had a meager number of O-levels, GCSEs, and I had no A-levels whatsoever. Nada, nothing, rien de rien, no A-levels. So uni admission said, come back and see us when you are ready to meet our entry requirements. So I gave up at that stage and I said, you know what, I'll go back to the kibbutz and carry on milking cows. And something very dramatic happened. There was a bus from Jerusalem towards the area where the kibbutz was in the south of Israel. And there was a bus to Tel Aviv. And on, call it instinct, call it whatever you want to call it, I decided to catch the bus to Tel Aviv and not yet to the kibbutz. Why Tel Aviv? The British embassy sits in Tel Aviv. On instinct, pure luck, call it what you will, I went to the embassy and I asked them, would you be able to accommodate me taking my A-level exams in the embassy? The cultural attaché said yes. So we agreed that I would sit my A-level exams 6 weeks later. But I had no syllabus, I had no books, I had no teachers, I had rien de rien, nothing. Went back to the kibbutz, said goodbye, found an apartment, small apartment in Jerusalem, and luckily or otherwise the apartment sat right opposite the British Council Library. And there I found all the books I ever needed. Remember, this was no Googles, no emails, no internet, no nothing, just simple books. 6 weeks later, I traveled to Tel Aviv, and I went, I think, 3 or 4 times because I had 3 A-levels to do. And I sat my exams, and then the results came, and I passed my A-levels. But in October 1976, I started my degree in International Relations and African Studies at the Hebrew University. In 1979, I got my degree. I had studied Swahili, which was a fabulous bonus because I got an incredibly fascinating job in London. And then I did the conversion course to law. I was called to the bar of England, Wales, and Gibraltar. And this is what professionally I do. Now, I make a very clear distinction between my professional life, that is, what I do for a living, and what I do for a life. And the clear as anything in my mind. For a living, I wear the wig, I dress up, I go through the motions, in fact, I never say I'm a lawyer. I practice law. Because saying I'm a lawyer frames me somehow. So I practice law. What I do to make a life is completely different. I'm a magician, ventriloquist, poet. I write music, I write songs. I do a whole breadth of activities which have nothing to do with law. Because to me, imitation is limitation. You have to find yourself through all the rubble and the splats and the confusion and the cobwebs and everything. You have to find yourself and find who is yourself within, inside, who is really you. Don't allow people out there to say you can't. Don't allow people to say to you, don't do this. Do whatever you feel is within you to achieve. Look, I'm fascinated by astronomy, but I know that I could never be an astronaut. It's just one of those things. But I do know what I can do, and I do know what really motivates me, and that is what I devote my time to. In Judaism, it's my religious faith, we are taught to carry 2 slips of paper with us, always. And I carry them with me. The first one reads, "The entire world was created for me." Okay? So everything, life, everything was created for me. The second one reads something completely different. "I am like the dust of the earth." Different messages, isn't it? Now, this one will help us push on, be ourselves, know where we're going, be definite about ourselves. This one reminds me always of a beautiful sentence by the Persian poet Rumi, who said, "You're not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." This one allows me to live my life like an exclamation, not an explanation. The second piece of paper, which talks about "I am like the dust of the earth," teaches me something completely different. To be humble, to know that there are people around, parents, friends, school teachers, gurus, who know more than I do, that I could always appeal to them, ask them to help me decide, take decisions. Ultimately, it's my decision, but get advice. And this one reminds me always of a saying by the British author C.S. Lewis, who wrote, "Humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less." So I try to give meaning to my life. We've got 2 options. Either we can look at life meaningfully, we can look at life meaninglessly. It's our choice. When you came in a while ago, you were no doubt handed a little card. I'd like you all to bring out this little card and have a look at the grid, and you will see that there are squares, blue and white squares, and each square has a saying. Imitation is limitation, fortune favors the bold, so on and so forth. I've got here a poster. It's I'm trying to aim you in one direction, but from now on you're going to of which square, blue square, you start with. So everybody do one thing, in fact 3 things. The first one is look at me so that I don't change this around. Look at this with the other eye so that this doesn't get changed around, and look down at the card so that you can follow the instructions I'm going to give you. Okay, so everybody place your finger one blue square. Just one blue square. You can check with your neighbors to ensure that you've placed your finger in a different blue square to what they have, so that we're all starting in different blue squares. And from this moment onwards, just follow my instructions. So start with your finger on one blue square, your choice. Once you've placed your finger on the blue square, move your finger up or down to the nearest white square. Up or down to the nearest white square. Move your finger left or right to the nearest blue square. Left or right to the nearest blue square. Now move diagonally to the nearest white square. Move diagonally to the nearest white square. And finally, move up or down to the nearest blue square. Move up or down to the nearest blue square. Remember, we about one particular word this morning. I'm going to show you what the poster reads, and hopefully this will resonate with some of you, maybe 5 of you, 6 of you. I'm not sure, let's see. If you ended up on meaning is now here. Forget meaning is nowhere. Meaning is now here. Get up and give yourself a very wild round of applause. Thank you so much. You've been a great audience, and enjoy the rest of the morning. Thank you.